Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for attending, and we are greatly appreciative of it. I am Siobhan Andrews, the student president of the new University of Arizona Global Campus Women in STEM organization. As an information technology student here, I am thrilled to say the University of Arizona Global Campus Women in STEM is a student-led organization that focuses on STEM careers for women. Our club includes the UAGC Women in Technology International Chapter, better known as WITI, and the UAGC chapter of Girls Who Code College Loop. While STEM careers are multiplying, women in STEM seem to be missing from the equation. We are here to empower you and help you manage the challenges of a gender imbalanced circle. We are here to collaborate ideas and start a dialogue to benefit from our organization and college community. It is time to close the gender gap and focus on increasing the number of STEM role models and mentors relatable to our future success story. Now, although our title is appealing to women interested in STEM careers, men are welcome to join the Alliance. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to place them inside the chat box, but we will have a question and answer segment at the end of each speaker. If we can go to our next slide. Now, I want you to see here our officers here. We just want to let you know who we all are. And again, we want to thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to pass the baton to our secretary, Mayan, to introduce our first speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mayan, and I have the pleasure of introducing Ms. Debra Christmas. She's a senior executive partner at Gartner. She has had an illustrious career with over 40 years in the high-tech field in the areas of sales, consulting, support channels, and information technology. She has served as Vice President of Hewlett-Packard Software Technical Sales for North and South America. She's led IT organizations in both the public and private sectors, driving change and transformation through engaged, diverse, and high-performance teams around the world. Ms. Christmas has also co-authored Please Stay, How Women in Tech Survive and Thrive. She's also the co-founder of Gladiators and Stilettos, a not-for-profit organization, and Women in Tech Tribe, focused on helping women in tech. Everyone, I give you Ms. Debra Christmas.
Just get off mute. There we go. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me today. I'm really thrilled to be here with you, talking about a subject that is so very important to all of us, communications, something that we can continue to work on day in, day out. So I'll go to the next slide and we'll get started. So I thought I'd start with a little bit of humor. I've just had 2 grandchildren born in the last 6 months. And we all know what this means. What are they doing? They are communicating with us. They are very clear. We need to sort of figure out what it is they're trying. It's got a purpose of some sort. We just got to figure out what it is. But we understand that they're trying to tell us something. It's not overly complicated. And what's interesting is as we learn to speak and use our words, things get less and less of all 3 of these. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about a couple of ways in which we communicate in a pretty rapid fire session here today. What I'm going to step through as quickly as I can is something that I would normally do in 3 hours, a 3-hour workshop on the power of communication. So we'll leave you with a few little tidbits. I'm going to ask all of you here today just to take a minute. Bear with me, you'll understand. I want you to close your eyes for about 60 seconds, and I want you to think back to the last time you had an exchange with somebody that didn't go so well, okay? Whether that be a partner, a spouse, a child, a parent, just take yourself back there for a minute, because I can guarantee you that something just went south in the communications. We communicate all day long, with every gesture, with every word, our facial expression. Sometimes we don't have to say a word and we have actually communicated something. And if something goes awry, that can take on a life of its own. It is one of the most important skills that we can have in our lifetime. It works in our private life, it works at play, it works at work. So as long as you're breathing, you have opportunity to develop this skill and to continue to tweak it and figure out, what works best for you. Lots of nuances in the way that we communicate, lots of techniques that we can leverage and fine tune that make us a better communicator. So we'll go to the next slide, please. So I thought I'd put this into context, okay? So we're all, you know, some of us are well established in our careers. I've been doing this for 42 years. Some of you might be just beginning, you're in the middle. So it's your career that you are embarking on this path. The OMG stands for Own It, Manage It, and Grow It. And the reason I put this slide together is we're living through such intense change right now. We're living and leading through all kinds of challenges. Nobody could have predicted that we would have been here this year. Nobody last year, January 2020, as we're all celebrating New Year's, would have thought for in a million years that we would have gone through the life-changing experience that the world has endured, and we're still in it. So none of us have become unscathed, but we've worked through racial tensions, we've worked through societal challenges, we've worked through a pandemic and a health crisis. So there's a lot of change. And I was preparing a workshop for a client on skills, soft skills. They asked me to do a workshop on soft skills. These are the top 10 soft skills. And when I looked at this, I thought, there is nothing soft about these skills. These are power skills. When I don't even know where that term came from. So I think it came from soft skills. From hard skills are those things that we go and study, we get a degree, we get a certificate, we take a test. But if you look at these skills, these are super powerful skills. And the more that we can master them, the better we can be at what we do every day, whatever that might be, whether it's volunteering, whether it's in a non-profit, whether it's in public sector, whether it's in corporate life. So one of them, as you see here on the screen, is communications. So we're going to sort of delve into this a little bit, because whatever you take away here, you'll be able to use in so many aspects of your life. So I'm only going to talk about 5 skills, but let's go to the next slide and let's talk a little bit about the power of communications. We use so many ways to communicate. Our voices are very important. We talk, we use our words. Some of us use lots of words. I'm a chatty Cathy, so I'm always talking. Our actions speak for us. The images that we use and that we project. I am telling you, my mother could give you one look and you knew exactly what was going on. Not one word was coming out of her mouth, but that communication was very clear. So let's delve into this a little bit more. We'll go to the next slide. What we're talking about is today particularly is we use lots of forms of communication. So one of the things I want you to think about with the myriad of ways in which we communicate, think carefully about which medium that you're using. We all know that a text exchange can take a life of its own on because we assume something, we read a tone into it. We're posting images on Facebook or LinkedIn, we're commenting on stories. These are all the different ways that we communicate, and they are subject to interpretation. So I want you to just think about when you're deciding which way do I want to communicate, which of these mediums might be best. You know, we all know that expression where I look at my text messages and I look at we're in the 3rd round, I better pick up the phone. Time for me to pick up the phone and have a real life conversation. So this applies in lots of the other ways that we communicate as well. And I'm going to take you through a couple. Let's go to the next slide, please. And depending on who you're communicating, I use this example. We have this show in Canada. I'm a Canadian gal. I live here in the Toronto area called W5. It's like the US 60 Minutes. So it's who, what, when, where, and why. So when you're thinking about what you're going to communicate about or with whom, think about who this is. Is it a boss? Is it a peer? Is it a mentor? Is it a child? Is it a spouse, etc.? You're going to use different mechanisms depending on who you're speaking to and what the situation might be. So I'm going to delve into just a couple and give you a few little tidbits. We'll go to the next slide. So when I think about communications, we're really trying to achieve a couple of things. We're either having a dialogue, we're exploring something with somebody, we've got ideas floating around. We might actually be just giving out information. FYI, I need to tell you this, a project update of some sort. We might be collaborating and trying to build something. So think about communications as a bridge, and what is it a bridge to? And that might help you decide on the framework in which you're going to use in order to engage in an exchange or a conversation or a written document, etc. Let's go to the next slide. So one skill number 1 we're talking about is listening. And most of us do not do this well, or we can put some attention to it. You know, I hear that expression all the time that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We need to listen more versus talk. This is a little bit of a model for active listening. You can take a look at the slide. But one of the other models that we use is this CARE model, which is concentrate on what the person is trying to tell you, because that will help you stay present and connected to them. So often we're already trying to think about what we're going to say, how we're going to respond. And then sometimes we even interject and we butt in and we respond before we've actually listened. You want to be able to connect and hear what they're saying. You want to be able to accept what they're saying. Doesn't mean you have to agree. Okay, acceptance is not agreeing. Acceptance is understanding that their views and their perspective has legitimacy. And it's really, they're expressing to you what they're thinking about or what they care about. So you need to at least accept that. Reflecting is where you get into things like mirroring and paraphrasing. I think you said this, or I heard you say that. Did I understand this? So there are some techniques to make sure that you heard and understood and comprehended what they were trying to tell you. Empathy is where you can relate to the situation, whatever they're talking about, and it's about building that connection with another human being. So this is the first skill, active listening. Let's go to the second. Okay? The second skill is the power of presenting. The image of this beautiful young woman that's on the screen is, I think she's 18 now, but when I met Zainab, I think she was 15 or 14. This is a gifted presenter. This is a teenage girl who has traveled around the world on stage in front of thousands of people presenting. So I look at this and think the younger that we can learn how to do this and get in front of people. I'm so thrilled when people, when children are taught this in school, because people are so afraid of presenting. No need to be afraid. You want to think about the questions that you want them to go away with. What do you want them to know? What do you want them to do? What's new? How can I connect with them? How does this actually help them do things better? The 4 Ps are projection, pause, pace, and pitch. I'm speaking a little quickly today because I'm trying to get through a couple of things in like 10, 12 minutes. But you want to think about how are you actually speaking. Non-verbal skills, like how you stand, what hands, are you jiggling in your pockets with your keys? Are you bouncing all over the place? These are just distractions. So there are ways in which you can get in front of a mirror and you can sort of practice how are you delivering, how are you projecting your voice, and what are the visuals that you are using, images that you're using, etc. I've got a note here called Power Bites. Look that up. This is Richard Butterfield's work, and I think there's a link in this deck. And what he talks about is you start with the conclusion in mind. What are we actually trying to achieve? And then you build the evidence, and then you have the ask is what you're going to do next. So that's the second skill. Let's go to the third. The third is storytelling. You've heard a lot about storytelling, but let me tell you a few things. We remember stories. Okay, human beings remember stories. Our brain takes away about 5 different sections of our brain kick in compared to, or 7 maybe, compared to 2 when we're just listening to facts, because stories engage us. We don't even necessarily will remember who told us the story, but we'll remember the story and we will share it. So there are techniques by which you can engage people with a story. They're very inspiring, make sure that they're relevant, they're real, people can feel them, they make an emotional attachment to them. So that's skill number 3, is get better at storytelling. And we all have lots of stories to tell. Let's go to the next slide. 4, powerful meetings. We have been meeting to death over the last year. People are tired. They're tired of all this, all the Zoom and all the other stuff. Meetings are important, but what you want to think about is what we call the why frame. What the why frame means: why am I here? Why is this important? Why should I listen to you? Will I have to participate? What do you want me to do? Why should I care? These are questions that everybody's thinking about when they get asked to go to the next meeting. So start thinking about that as you plan your meetings. And then question-led meetings, the reason they're so important is because they're about data sharing and they're about problem solving. Instead of just having an agenda, people have to come prepared to answer questions. And then they're not going to ditch the meeting and not do their homework. Okay, so you give them some work to do. They already start working on things before they get to the meeting. We're going to go to the next slide. Last skill. Power of email. We are using email day in, day out for all kinds of things, and it's really been misused and abused. So what's critical about email is what we call the ABCs. What's the action you want people to take? What's the background that they need to have? And what conclusion are you trying to get to? Meaning, do they have to make a decision of some sort? So be very brief, be very specific, 1 topic per email, use descriptive subject lines as to what you want them to do. What's the action, so that they know how to proceed. So these are the 5 skills of communications that every single one of us can benefit from. So I'm going to take us to the next slide. What I want you to think about is we have this thing that we call wisdom, what I will say and do differently on Monday. It is Friday. So you've given us some moments of your time. You're going to invest an hour with this group of gals here and learn a lot of interesting things. As you're going out there looking for your next career opportunity and your next job or your next promotion, think about how are you going to communicate who you are, how you're going to do what you're going to do, why you, why now, why should they be interested, and figure out which of these tools you can leverage in what kind of way. If you're interviewing, then communications is critical because you are telling stories and you are giving them details on situations that you've been involved in. So all of these can be useful. You're also following up with them in emails, thanking them for their time, etc. So wisdom, keep that in your mind. And the last thing, we'll go to the next slide. We're talking here about change. We are creatures of habit. And it's really difficult to change just because we're habitual. We like to do things, and changing the way we do things is a little bit harder. So, and our brain will resist a little bit, but if you put some of these things into practice, they'll become second nature, and you'll feel much more comfortable in how you're, communicating. Try something new, try something different. Next slide. This is we'll just build it out if you hit one more time. You'll see the other slide. We're very comfortable in, when you've driven somewhere and you've got there and you think, how the heck did I get here? I just drove 4 hours. I don't remember seeing anything on the road, because it's a habit. And we're not paying as attention as much. When we're trying to learn something new, it's going to feel a little bit bumpy. It's going to feel a little bit challenging, not so effortless, but it'll be worth it at the end of the day. Okay, so give it a shot. One more time. I think we've got one more. Communication ninja. That's what I want you to be. So think about, what are you actually doing? Are you informing? Are you educating? Are you just sharing information? Are you trying to persuade, trying to influence, trying to learn? So when you put this all in a frame, you'll be able to give some thought to which is the way that you want to communicate, whether it's going for the job, going for the promotion, etc. I think that's about it before I turn it over. Oh, this is just a little commitment slide that you can sort of take away and figure out what do you want to focus on. But I thank you so much for the time. I think I'm going to hand it back. It is a skill worth developing, and I so appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts with you today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Christmas. I really appreciate it. I gained a lot of information from your presentation. Now it's time for questions and answers. Did anyone have any questions? And if you do, you can place them in the chat and I will read them out. While we're waiting for questions, I actually have a question, and it's related to interviewing. I know you spoke briefly about interviewing, and a lot of times when you have to interview with someone, the interviewee, I will say that I've been in that seat, the interviewee tends to be nervous. So how do you overcome that nervousness without, I guess, because I always felt as if you're nervous, that can be a good sign, but also it seems as if, you don't want the interviewer to think that, oh, you're just a ball of nerves, that you don't know how to control yourself. So how do you overcome that?
Oh, such a good question. So there's two things here. One is, when you're interviewing, and it's such a critical part, is this is a two-way exchange. Okay, they are interviewing you to determine if you have the right skills and can you do the job. You're interviewing them to see if they deserve you. Okay, do they deserve you? Are you going to the right place? Is this a good fit? Do they have the right cultures and value and leadership? Because when we go to work somewhere and we have a really strong work ethic, we're all in. So it's just as much about you making a choice of them as it is about them making a choice of you. So I want to say that so strongly, because we get upset if we don't get the job or we don't make it to the final round. Then we weren't supposed to be there. Okay, that's not the place that we were supposed to be. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to find what you need to. Sometimes it's music, sometimes it's reading something, maybe calling your mother or a friend, call a friend and get what I call that booster shot, that someone's going to say, go get this thing. You want it, go get it. And get yourself that little bit of confidence, like, I got this. I've got the skills, I've got the talent, I've got the competencies, I'm smart. Why wouldn't they want me? So do a little exercise. I'm a Bruno Mars person, so I'll just play that thing and blast it through the car and get into your zone so that those jitters sort of calm down.
Thank you for answering my question. I have another one. What's one simple step that people can do to begin improving their communication skills?
Oh, practice, practice, practice. So pick an area. So I'm an extreme extrovert, so talking is easy. But some people are introverts, so they might struggle a little bit. There's going to be a little bit more shyness. So you practice, you get in front of a mirror. I know it sounds ridiculous. You get in front of a mirror, get somebody to interview you. I do dry runs with people all the time because I'm going to ask you the hard questions. And I'm going to ask you the hard questions so that you're going to be more comfortable in coming up with the answer quickly. Nobody wants to be going da, 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 da. You want to be able to come back quickly. So get somebody to practice with you and tell them to put you through your paces, and then you'll feel better prepared. That's what I would suggest.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You speak with such confidence. So I hope that everyone was able to learn something, as well as be able to hopefully they see that, a woman that has such a long career, that they will be able to see themselves in you, because you are able to provide so much information to us. I have another question. It states, this is from Miss Shonda Wansley. I'm a really shy person, and I often feel like when I'm interviewing and I sometimes stumble over my words, I get nervous when trying to explain my strengths. How do I overcome this? Great question.
Okay, so first, everybody gets nervous from time to time. So just pause. Just pause for a second. I know it might feel like it's 2 minutes when it's 10 seconds, and just regroup a little bit. Recognize that you're introverted and you're shy, and you've got a lot of information in your head that you're trying to impart. So just pause, just for a second. Everybody's human and everybody understands it. Also, keep in mind the skills that you have. Know what you've got. And what I mean by that is we all have these alter egos, okay? So I think the world knows who Beyonce is. Does everybody know who Sasha Fierce is? So when you watch Beyonce interviewed, she's very quiet, very demure. She's a shy person by nature. Do you think that is what shows up on stage? No. Sasha Fierce shows up on stage. So find who your alter ego is, name her or him, define it, and be able to call that forward. You only need to do it for a half an hour, whatever the interview is, and then you can go in your car and say, oh my God, I'm good, I'm done. But be able to bring that up so that your confidence can shine through. Stumbling over a word or two doesn't mean you're not confident. Doesn't mean you're not confident. It just means you've got a lot of stuff to share and you're just trying to align your thoughts with your words and your mouth at the same time. So just find some techniques that you can tap into really quickly. Give it a name, it always helps. Let me just call up Jada or Sasha or whoever, and you can get into that zone.
Thank you so much. Well, I really appreciate you spending time with Women in STEM today and giving us some great pointers on communication. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Siobhan Andrews.
Thank you, Mayan. And I am going to be introducing our next panelist. So next we're going to have Lindsey Brennan, who is a staff and agency recruiter for information technology professionals, servicing the Fortune 1000 public sector and emerging growth firms. She has partnered with organizations such as the Georgia Department of Revenue, the Georgia Department of Transportation, Priceline.com, UPS Logistics, State Farm, and CDC, and other companies. Lindsey started working in the staffing and recruiting industry in 1994, has attended hundreds of interviews with end clients and interviewed thousands. She specializes in helping entry levels up to senior level individuals build resumes to stand out amongst the peers, and mentors in talking your way through an interview for positive results versus talking yourself out of a job. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Lynsey Brennan.
Hello, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for joining us today to discuss how to get your resume noticed by recruiters. So I think we'll start with types and levels of recruiters. When it comes to creating your resume, it's going to be important to understand how recruiters and hiring managers locate resumes and look at the content. You have agency recruiters and corporate recruiters. Each work a little bit differently. I'll talk about agency recruiting first. agency recruiters have to compete with other recruiting agencies to fill jobs, as their clients, who we're going to refer to as the hiring manager, uses multiple agencies at the same time for the same job. Agency recruiters are very driven. They're driven because they're competing against all these other companies. They've got to find the best candidate first. So they have many resumes to filter through when they're looking at candidates that have applied. All these resumes are put into an application tracking system, and then a search tool pulls resumes out based on search strings that the recruiter actually typed into the system. The system then delivers these resumes with those skills and functions highlighted for them throughout the resume. The recruiter then adds up how long you were actually at each of your jobs where you use those skills and functions. And if you have the number of years required and current experience, you will get a phone call. Recruiters also use resume databases to search for candidates. These databases are Monster, Dice.com, Career Builder, and even LinkedIn. Using the same search process, that search process is similar to search engine optimization. They look for resumes with the most relevant content. They sort resumes for the recruiter in order of relevance of the content in there. So the first resume actually returned in the system contains most of the skills and the functions that they're searching for. So it's really important that you tailor your resume content to every single job that you apply for because of this process on the other end. So in order for your resume to stand out, you need to make sure that you pack it with as many skills and functions that the job asks for at each job where you use those skills. If you put that you have 6 years with a skill in your resume, you need to add up the dates on each job and make sure that it covers 6 years. Now, there's different levels of agency recruiters. You've got junior level recruiters who just do a word search for the skills in your resume. And if you have the skills, they'll call you and just ask you, how many years do you have with each? Then they're going to pass you over to a senior recruiter who's going to review your resume, is going to review you and call you, or your resume is going to be put into what's called a VMS system, which I'll go over in the next slide. So a senior level recruiter is going to dissect your resume and decide if your content is worth calling for the actual job that you've applied for. They have different relationships with the clients. You want to work with a recruiter as much as you can that has a one-on-one manager relationship with the clients. That way it's more of a quality process. The other ways of doing things we'll discuss in the next slide, which is not as much quality for you or the recruiter. So working with corporate recruiters, they search for candidates the same way as agency recruiters do as well. So the corporate recruiters, however, when you apply for a job directly with the actual corporation and not through a recruiting agency, you're going to work with their HR department primarily. So these are salaried employees. So they don't compete with any other companies to find the top candidate and the right candidate first. So they're not as motivated, and the process is going to take longer to actually get through to an interview. They're not specialists either, they're generalists, okay? Can I have the next slide, please? So when it comes to corporate sourcing, corporations search for talent in different ways. There's different avenues that they can take. You know, they have their internal recruiting and their agency recruiters. So sometimes the actual process of working with a corporation for a recruiter is a quality process where the manager talks to the recruiter, talks about the requirement, what's important, all the nuances that they're going to want in a person. And but many times that manager is not allowed to talk to the recruiter due to corporate policy. And this is your very large corporations that do this. So there's a third-party organization involved, and they provide a software for the hiring manager to advertise their job to multiple agency recruiters at the same time. So these systems have anywhere from 20 to 300 agency recruiters that receive the same job at the same time. It now became a lottery, so to say. It's a roll of the dice as to whether your resume is going to make it to a hiring manager. You'll get multiple calls from the same job from different agencies competing with each other. The VMS organization that has the software actually decides which resume goes to the hiring manager purely by doing a word search for skills and functions in your resume. So resumes that have more of those functions and skills searched for will go to the hiring manager. Those that don't will not make it past the system. So hence, it's really important to always tailor your resume to the job you're applying for, each job. So you will typically only work with a junior recruiter for these types of systems because they're just going to verify how many years you have with each skill and function, how many years with them. They won't interview you, as these systems don't make for a quality process. It's very hard to get a candidate hired, and senior recruiters are paid on commission only for getting people hired. So another way a corporation and recruiting agencies find you is by searching resume sites such as the Monster and the Dice. There's many of these systems. They are free sites to you to add your resume, but corporations and recruiting agencies looking for talent have to pay a subscription to search the resumes in the database, which is extremely expensive. Each corporation typically only subscribes to 1 or 2 resume sites. Agencies may have 2 to 3 sites. So if your resume isn't in the database that they pay for, they can't find you. It's the same with LinkedIn. It's free for you to put your profile in there, but corporations have to pay a large amount to actually search for the candidates. So if a corporation isn't subscribing to LinkedIn to pay for that, they're not going to find you. So don't just rely on having a LinkedIn profile. Make sure you upload your resume to as many resume sites as possible so that more companies can find you. So when recruiters use these resume sites, they enter skills and functions that they're looking for into a tool, as well as other criteria. Only those resumes that contain what you are searching for many times throughout a resume will be delivered. Those that have more of the words in the resume will float to the top. You always want your resume to float to the top. LinkedIn uses the same tool as well. Next slide, please. So resume content to capture your audience. You want to build a resume that gets noticed and stands out. Make sure you have these headers in your resume. You don't have to have a separate objective. You can incorporate it under your summary. It's not required that you include an objective, but you will be questioned about your career goals in an interview. An objective is your career goal, short-term, long-term, or both. Next slide, please. Contact information in your resume. Make sure you put all your contact information in your resume. You would be surprised as to how many people don't do this. It should be your full legal name that you use and no nicknames. If you actually go by your middle name, that's okay. You can put your first name initial and then your middle name. With the relevant titles after your name, such as your PhD or certifications, you want to add certifications after your name if they are relevant to the job you're applying for. Don't put them if they're not relevant. Make sure you include the city and state that you reside in. If you're applying for an out-of-state job, you will need to include in your summary your intentions to self-relocate, as companies do not want to pay for relocation unless you are an executive level person. Make it easy for recruiters to contact you. Include a phone number, not just an email address. It's best to set up a Google Voice number versus using your real number so that you can screen calls and turn it off once you've found a job. As the jobs may not stop coming, you'll keep getting calls all the time, and it can be bothersome working with those VMS systems. Next slide, please. Summary and objectives. Again, you want to tailor your resume towards each job description you apply for. Your resume is a sample of your written communication ability. It will tell an audience what your written communication skills are versus what you would like to tell them they are. Make sure you use that resume to your full advantage to communicate everything possible about yourself. If you should clarify your achievements relevant to the job you're applying for, your level of experience, and your characteristics. You need to include also things that they can't tell about you, such as what type of worker are you? What are your characteristics? What are you passionate about? Include personal values such as integrity, passionate about, ambitious, committed, results-oriented, self-starter, positive attitude. It can include, your resume can include academic and professional experience in the summary there, based on your level of experience that you have already. So to create a summary, you want to condense your experience that relates to the job you're actually applying for. It's a highlight of your abilities for that job. If you want to include an objective, tailor that to their job as well. Next slide, please. So skills, everyone should have a skills section under the summary. Whether you're a technical or functional person, you need to include a skills section. Only list skills here that you are proficient with. If you are a novice with any skills, do not list them in this section. You need to include those in your job description under the company where you actually use that skill or function. New slide, please. When it comes to writing about your professional and academic experience, if you don't have professional work experience, you will need to list your academic projects instead, just like a job, and title it academic projects. List your jobs or academic projects in chronological order from most current on down. Include the city and state for each job of your jobs and dates of employment. Make sure your dates for each job line up with each other in the resume. For job titles, make sure your job title is the same as what your employer issued as the title, because this is verified in a background check and they need to be the same. Your tasks at each job on an academic project should be listed in bullet point format as condensed sentences to make it easy to read. Paragraphs are harder to read and don't allow information to stand out easily. The first bullet point of any job description should be what the project was for the role and function and type of system. Thereafter, it should be bullet points for tasks and skills you used and what you use them for. Use the same words as the job description you're applying for to describe your functions in your resume, because don't forget, that's the words the recruiter is going to be searching for. And if those words aren't in there, your resume won't do well in the search results. Your last bullet point should be for the technical environment. You can subtitle it technical environment and then list all the technical skills in your work environment. If you are not a hands-on technical person, but your job involves being around technology in some capacity, it's a way to show the technical environment that you actually worked in. So for example, if you're a business analyst, you're not hands-on with the technical skills such as .NET or Java like a developer, but you are working to modify or implement software that is developed using .NET or Java. If the job you apply for is modifying or implementing Java-based applications and you list Java applications as an environment you worked in, you now stand out amongst other candidates applying for the same job. You don't list their skill, if they don't list their skill environments, then they're not going to come up in the search as well as you will. If you have work experience, but it's not related to the job you're applying for because you're transitioning into a new industry or a graduate, still include the jobs you had outside of the industry. Having prior work experience, even not related to the industry, reveals to your audience that you have work values. You know what it's like to get up and make it to a job in time each day. It also shows them the level of work that you have been accustomed to. In tailoring your resume to the job you're applying for, you will want to use a highlight pen to highlight all the skills and functions that are actually written in the job description. Then go to your resume and do the same. Highlight the skills and functions they're asking for. Now look at your resume. Use a different color for each skill and function. Does your resume show the skills and functions that they're asking for? And does it stand out in each of your jobs if you used it there? Is it something that really catches the eye? Try to keep your resume to no more than 2 pages. As you gain years of experience in multiple jobs, they can go over 2 pages. Check past tense and present tense in your resume. People constantly make mistakes with this, and that's bad. Jobs you left where in the past need to be written using past tense, not present tense. New slide, please. Education and certifications. Education can go at the bottom or at the top of your resume. If you have a high GPA, list the GPA. If it's a lower GPA, don't list your GPA score. If you have a master's degree or higher, put the education section at the top of the resume, bringing it to the viewer's attention first. If you don't have a degree, put education at the bottom so they can read your experience first. The certifications, awards, and affiliations section, list what certifications you have and are currently taking along with the expected achieved by date. Only list certifications if they are associated to the job you're applying for. New slide, please. So resume content and translation. How does what you write translate? So what you write and how you write it is going to translate a certain way to your audience. Your resume affects your career. It speaks to your attention to detail or lack of attention to detail. How you write your resume, the way you word it and lay it out can have positive or negative effects. If your resume doesn't flow in a manner that's easy to follow and your content isn't following the life cycle of tasks that you do, it is perceived that you are all over the place, can't organize and structure things. So grammar you use is scrutinized. How well do you write a sentence? Do you use the correct tense? Are you repetitive? Do you use the same sentence for the same function in every job? That's not very creative. Employees want creativity. You can put the same information in each job, but write it in a different way if you can. Punctuation, make sure you use correct punctuation. With bullet points, you can use periods after bullet points or you can leave them out. But you must make sure all bullet points then end the same way, with a period or without a period. Dates of employment are very telling to an employer. Dates are looked at to determine if you move around a lot. Short-term employment dates are interpreted as you can't keep a job. You're not good at what you do, or you can't commit to anything. Don't jump around from job to job. It's important to hang or to have a longer duration of employment, such as 3 years plus. It's okay to work shorter term contracts in between longer term jobs or contracts once your career is off to a good start with the longer term jobs there. Employers don't want to hire people that move around a lot because they invest time in you and this costs them money when you leave early. Employees will also look at your growth within an organization and job to job. If they don't see this, they think that you're not capable of doing any more or you don't want to do much more. You lack the drive and motivation to be more. The more exposure that you have to different environments, the more valuable you become to an organization. If you have significant gaps in employment between jobs, this makes them think that you can't get a job easily because you don't interview well. You're not good at what you do. The degree you took, GPA and certifications can make you more attractive as a candidate. A certification with experience in that domain can help you gain a higher paying job. A certification with no experience in that domain will not benefit you. It's the experience that counts. Your GPA will be used to see if you struggle throughout the programs at school. They also take in consideration the level of school you went to and the type of program you took. So affiliations and associations, these are good to have in your resume. There are ways that you can show what your passion is outside of work. It's also a way to let people know if you are a minority by certain associations you belong to. And with a big push for diversity today, it's a huge plus to have those. When you think of your resume, once you've done it and you've got everything in there, make sure you use spell check. Have someone else review the resume to make sure it reads well and no grammar or punctuation issues. And make sure everything is aligned as well on the resume. The bullet points are all lined up and it looks nice. And make sure all of the fonts in the resume throughout your resume are correct. At the end of this program, there's going to be 2 sample resumes on the UAGC website. One's going to be a professional work experience and one's going to be for a graduate level. Next slide, please. So there's a free resume analysis for you from R2I Prep. If you visit their website and send a request on their contact page, you can go ahead and register for that, and it's worth doing. So, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much, Ms. Brennan, for the wealth of information that you presented for us today. And I don't know if anyone is like myself, but I've already saved this from the Facebook Live and due to you and our first speaker. And I'm sure that we're going to have a fantastic closing with our last one. And we already have a wealth of questions while you've been speaking. So we'll just go right at it. The first question is, how would you include self-taught programming skills on your resume when you're wanting to change from a career that's non-technology into the technology field?
Self-taught skills you would put in your summary, and then under education, you can list it under there as well. You could put a title of self-taught skills and then talk about what you've done to do that. So if you took online courses through some of these classes that you can do, you can list those there as well. But make sure that you really highlight that in your summary as to how you've been doing it and you know what you put into it already.
All right, and then our second question we have, for the past 3 years, they have been working on building their resume. Does it look bad to have too many jobs, like not staying at a job for more than 2 years, for an example?
It can look bad, but if you're starting out in your career, you know, it depends whether you're talking about jobs like you were, you know, an office administrator, you know, doing temporary assignments, and then, you know, now you're moving on to more of the area, the industry that you're trying to focus on. So everyone understands that when you're getting started out in your career, you are going to have more of the shorter term assignments if they are not the actual industry that you're trying to target. So once you get into that industry you're targeting, then it's going to be critical to make sure you have longer durations.
Thank you. And the next question we have is, what would you write on the headline title in LinkedIn if the person is looking for a Java developer or software engineer position, but do not have previous work experience? They only have, again, self-taught skills.
With no college experience as well, that's going to be hard to find a job like that. People, if you're looking for Java development to be a developer, most of these large organizations are going to want a degree. So you'd be focusing anyway on smaller organizations. So you would just in your title put entry-level self-taught developer and then list your skills, seeking job opportunities.
Then let me see, I'm going into the question and answer chat. We have, if the previous job is not related to the position that they're applying for, do we need to include the previous position?
Yes, and I think you probably heard that towards the end after you asked that question, that yes, you do, because it's important to see that the type of jobs you've had, the level of job you've had already, and that you are used to actually getting up and going to a job, and that you understand what it's like to be an employee, that someone doesn't have to teach you those things.
Thank you. And next, let's see, if the GPA is a 4.0 till this time, and they're expecting a graduation date within the next 6 months, do we need to list the GPA?
I would definitely list the GPA, yes, absolutely, and put your expected graduation date.
All right. And I think the last question here would be, if you're not starting out and have different workplaces, how can you position yourself in the best possible light on your resume in an interview?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. It reads, if you are not starting out and have different workplaces, how can you position yourself in the best possible light on your resume and in an interview? And this is from Susan Burgett, if I'm saying your name correctly, if you want to rephrase that.
So I think what you're asking is, you know, if you've moved around a lot, even in the industry, you've got work experience, how can you talk your way through an interview where that doesn't look negative? So any employer or recruiter is going to ask you, well, why did you leave that job? They're going to walk through each job and say, well, was that a contract, a temporary job, or a full-time job? Temporary and contract jobs, they understand when they don't last too long. But if it's a full-time job, you have to have a pretty good reason as to why you wanted to move on to the next job. If you were laid off, that explains everything. You don't have to explain anything more to that. Now, if you left because you weren't happy or you wanted more, that's okay, but you have to phrase it in a way that you want to achieve more. That was the only job available at the time, and you want to, move on to other things and excel in your career. So I hope that answers your question. If not, you can actually contact me through the website of R2I Prep, and we can talk about that.
Right. Well, again, thank you so much for everything that you've provided and for answering all the questions that we have. We greatly appreciate it, Ms. Brennan.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.
No, thank you. And we're going to pass it on to our last speaker. So Yam, take it away.
Thank you. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to introduce our very own Amanda Johnson, to talk to us about optimizing our LinkedIn profile. So Amanda serves as our career advisor for the Forbes School of Business and Technology. She holds a Master's of Human Resource Management degree. She's worked as a technical recruiter for Fortune 500 companies throughout the United States, and holds a global career development facilitator credential, and is a certified federal career coach. We're so excited to have you here with us to talk to us about optimizing our LinkedIn profile.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Yam. I am so excited to be here today. Today, I'm going to talk about LinkedIn and explain why it is so important in today's job market. I am also going to discuss the must-have items for your LinkedIn profile, as well as some nice-to-have items. And then lastly, I'm going to outline some strategies that you can utilize to optimize your LinkedIn profile for employers. Next slide, please. So why should you use LinkedIn? For starters, LinkedIn is a powerful tool that allows you to connect with professionals from all over the world. It is currently the world's largest professional networking platform, and it allows you to make connections with minimal effort. Overall, connecting on LinkedIn is a relatively low-stakes way for you to build, maintain, and leverage your professional network. In addition to building your professional network, LinkedIn can also help you to find job opportunities. LinkedIn has become a premier job board with exceptional search capabilities, similar to other job boards such as Indeed and Monster. You can essentially search for any type of job on LinkedIn and find jobs that are relevant to your skills and competencies. LinkedIn can also help you to get recruited. Recruiters and human resource professionals often have unique and super user capabilities on LinkedIn that allow them to search for ideal candidates based on the qualifications for a given job. Therefore, having an optimized profile can help recruiters to find you on LinkedIn. And I'm going to further discuss LinkedIn optimization later on in the presentation. A LinkedIn profile also supports your resume. Most HR professionals will try to validate your resume by searching for you on LinkedIn. According to LinkedIn, 94% of recruiters use LinkedIn to vet job opportunities. Therefore, your resume and LinkedIn profile should be closely related to each other. In a previous role, I was a technical recruiter for a software testing company, and I would frequently validate resumes by searching for the candidate on LinkedIn. And lastly, you should use LinkedIn because it has several useful resources. In addition to its comprehensive job search and networking capabilities, LinkedIn offers skills tests, competency badges, and opportunities to engage with thought leaders across all industries and professions. Next slide, please. There are several must-have items that need to be included on your LinkedIn profile. First, you must have a professional profile photo. In the photo, you should be wearing professional attire and it should be in focus. Therefore, selfies are not acceptable for your LinkedIn profile photo. So make sure that somebody else is taking that photo for you. Additionally, the background of the photo, it should be non-distracting and professional looking. For example, the background photo should not be the inside of your car or your bedroom. According to LinkedIn, a profile photo can result in 14 times more profile views. Next, you must include your first and last name. This should not be your nickname, and it should match the name that is listed on your resume. Underneath your name, you must include a headline. Your headline is the first thing that people see, and it's also the first thing that recruiters get when they screen through their search results. So therefore, you want to have a headline that catches people's attention. Unless you change it, your headline will appear as either your current or your last position held. It's recommended to create a headline that states the industry or the profession that excites you. Below your headline, you must include information in the summary section. This section should describe your professional background and outline your professional goals and ambitions. It's really recommended to talk about who you are, what you're passionate about, and explain your core areas of expertise and competencies. Another must-have item for your LinkedIn profile is your professional work experience. In this section, it's important to list the organization, the job title, dates of employment, and overall scope of work for each job that you have held. To really stand out, you should also outline your key accomplishments and how you added value to the company. Recruiters really want to see measurable results on your profile. You also must include your current and previous degrees in the education section. If you are currently working towards a degree, you can list your expected completion date. For this shows employers that you are currently in school and you're working towards a degree. Lastly, you must use correct grammar, punctuation, and spelling throughout your entire profile. It's important to remember that LinkedIn is a professional marketing tool, and it really should be treated like a digital resume. The next slide, please. So there are also several nice-to-have items that should be included on your LinkedIn profile. One item is creating a custom URL instead of using the generic URL that LinkedIn generates for you. It's recommended to create a unique URL that is professional and custom. And a custom URL will make it easier for recruiters to find you, and it can also increase your profile rank in Google. Another nice-to-have item is listing your school courses. Courses that are directly related to the type of job that you're applying for can give an employer insight into the types of competencies that you have developed during your degree program. You can also list school projects to further highlight these competencies. Projects could include things such as leading a group, building an app, creating a training program, giving a presentation, or conducting research. It is suggested to include volunteer experience if you have any. If you do include volunteer experience, you should provide a description of the experience, especially if the duties and responsibilities align with your career goals. And this can be listed either in a bullet point format or in a short paragraph. It is also suggested to include industry-specific skills in the skills section of your LinkedIn profile. These skills should be relevant to the job that you are pursuing, and you should list at least 5 key skills that your professional connections can endorse. The more endorsements you have for a specific skill, the more likely that you'll come up in the search results when recruiters are searching for that specific skill. Another nice to have item is listing any honors and awards that you have earned. This could include the Dean's List, honor societies, and other recognitions and awards. Lastly, it is suggested to use optimized keywords throughout your profile. You can optimize the chances of your LinkedIn account being found by recruiters by using keywords that employers search for. And I'm going to do a deeper dive into optimized keywords in the next slide. Now that we've covered the must-have and nice-to-have items for your LinkedIn profile, it's time to talk about LinkedIn optimization and why it's so important. As I previously mentioned, recruiters frequently use LinkedIn to find candidates for jobs, and they can't find you without a completed and optimized LinkedIn profile. Whether you are using LinkedIn to attract recruiters or supplement your resume, your profile will only make an impact if it's complete and tailored to the jobs that you want. Therefore, the first step to optimizing your LinkedIn profile is to make sure that every section has been completed and that there are no blank spaces or obvious gaps. Your LinkedIn profile is essentially your online resume, so it's important to treat it with that same level of seriousness that you would your normal resume. It is also recommended to have at least 50 connections on LinkedIn to have a fully complete profile. The next step to optimizing your LinkedIn profile is to list industry-specific keywords throughout your profile. To find these industry-specific keywords, it is recommended to go through several job postings for positions of interest to you. So for example, you may be applying to software testing jobs in San Diego. I would then suggest finding 8 to 10 job postings for software testing roles in San Diego, and then carefully review the postings. While reviewing the job postings, it's really important to pay attention to the daily job responsibilities section and the qualifications section. Once you review 8 to 10 job postings for similar positions, you will gain a good understanding of the key skills that employers are seeking for that specific role. And it is suggested to write down and keep track of these skills while you review the job postings. Then you want to incorporate as many of those keywords as you can on your LinkedIn profile, as long as you have that specific skill. And then when including these keywords, the main areas that you want to focus on for your LinkedIn profile include that headline section, your about section, the work experience section, and then the skills and endorsement section. Once your profile is in good shape, you want to make sure that you are active on LinkedIn to increase your marketability, searchability, and visibility. You want to build your professional network by connecting with coworkers, people you have done business with, classmates, and friends. To build your network, you could also join groups on LinkedIn. And according to LinkedIn, only 16% of members are in the maximum number of groups allowed, which is 50 groups. You can find groups related to your current industry or the industry that you're hoping to enter. And it is suggested to be an active participant in at least 2 to 3 of these groups to get your profile noticed by other industry contacts. Also, according to LinkedIn, your profile is 5 times more likely to be viewed if you join and are active in groups. So to summarize, there are 3 key ways to optimize your LinkedIn profile. You must fully complete your LinkedIn profile, incorporate industry-specific keywords to increase your searchability, and then actively build your network and professional connections. And the next slide, please. So if you are looking for assistance with LinkedIn, please reach out to Career Services. You can send us an email at careerservices@uagc.edu, and we would be happy to help you optimize your profile. And we are also here to assist you with any other career development needs, such as optimizing your resume, preparing for a job interview, and just developing job search strategies. But that is all I have today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Amanda. As you were going through the presentation, I was thinking of all the ways I need to update my LinkedIn profile, so that'll be my task for the weekend. I want to go ahead and open the floor for any questions that you may have for Amanda about our LinkedIn optimization. Amanda, you have a thank you from Ramona. She says, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation, Amanda. It is greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Ramona.
Jan, we have a question in the Q&A from Suzanne. How do you create a custom URL for yourself?
That's a great question. So you just have to go into your profile and then it walks you through the entire process. I can also include a link in the chat that walks you through how to change that URL as well. And it includes screenshots. So I'll include that right now, but that's a great question.
Thank you. All right, from the Q&A, we have, how important is it to change the LinkedIn cover photo?
That's a really great question. So the LinkedIn, the cover photo, it can really help to set you apart from other candidates. And you should really think about it as a personal branding tool as well. And you want it to tell something about you, but also in a way that's professional. So for example, on my LinkedIn profile with the cover, I use the skyline of San Diego because I live in San Diego. So it tells a little bit about me. I've seen some really great ones that include like a professional quote that ties to that individual or shows something that they're passionate about. So it can be a great way to stand out from others and just share a little bit more about yourself. You also want to keep in mind that it does need to remain professional.
Thank you. And one more question, Amanda. Is it okay to add the projects that students did in their Java programming class if they are planning to apply for a junior Java developer?
Absolutely. Yeah, so any projects where you have worked on tools or softwares or skills that relate to that position you're applying for, you definitely want to include those projects on LinkedIn, especially if you don't have that in-field experience or that direct work experience. Including those projects can really help to show that you have those competencies and like where you gained those skills.
Thank you very much. And Suzanne is looking forward for the link for the personalized URL.
I'll include that right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your time today, Amanda and everyone. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Lisa right now to tell us how to connect and what's coming up next.
Well, first of all, let me thank all of our amazing speakers. They did an awesome job with all the information that was presented. We can't thank you enough. And I wanted to let everybody know to continue to connect with us. Right now, you've probably heard that the UAGC clubs are transitioning over to UAGC Connect. So please connect with us on UAGC Connect. We're also going to continue to keep the LinkedIn group up. So we're going to update in both places until everything kind of works itself out. So that way you won't miss anything. And then if you have any questions or if you want to volunteer or anything or whatever it may be, there's our email address. Feel free to email us there as well. And I want to let you know about our July event that's coming up on July 29th. And we are going to have an awesome webinar event with Vernice, the Fly Girl Armor. And if you just want to find out how to reach your goals and what that secret formula is, you don't want to miss this exciting webinar. And I'm going to put the link to the registration in the chat. And so this is going to be a very interactive webinar. We're actually going to Let fly girl. She's going to share with us her vast amount of experience from, she was in the Marine Corps, and then she was also the first African-American police officer. So in Tennessee. And so she's got a lot of experience, and she was in the Marines, and she was a helicopter pilot. So she's got a lot of experience that she's going to share with us. And then we're going to break out into breakout rooms, and we're going to be able to just dive a little bit deeper into the content. So I highly encourage you to go ahead and register for that upcoming event. And so I'm going to go ahead and close. Thank you all for joining us. We have enjoyed presenting this information to you. And so just continue to look out for the email communications that go out, as well as the information that's going to be posted in our LinkedIn group, as well as UAGC Connect. And we look forward to seeing you next month. Stay safe, and thank you for tuning in. Have a great one.